So I finally got to sit down and watch Bloodfest, which is currently streaming on Showtime and should not be confused with Hellfest or American Fright Fest, which all came out in 2018. It has been a fest of fests in the year 2018. Happy New Year's, everybody. It is currently 2019, and I'm still trying to catch up on 2018 films because there's so damn many. And this is just horror. I haven't even touched any other genre this year because I've been trying so hard to stick to all the horror that's come out, and my God, has there been so much. After watching this film, I am going to just outright say, finally, once and for all, that I just don't care for meta, self-aware horror movies. You guys know how much I dislike the Scream franchise and what it did to the state of horror for almost a decade. And it still is a thing. There's still films like this. Even films like Cabin in the Woods, which I really enjoyed my first viewing, didn't hold up very well for me on a second viewing. Because I guess using that self-aware meta approach to not only your storytelling, but your comedy, your horror, every part of the movie, it just feels lazy to me. It does. It feels like, and almost insulting to the genre. I know, trust me, when I sat down and I thought of my reasons why I must dislike these things, I roll my eyes at myself. I sat and I wrote, I was, giving a little written review on my Facebook page, and I was telling people, why don't I like these kinds of films? And I was like, I guess it's because it's insulting to the things I love. I'm sitting there and watching people make fun of the genre that they're currently existing in, which is ironic and silly, but it doesn't seem like a complaint that I would personally give, but it's really one of the only ones I can come up with. And that's, in addition to that, it just doesn't work for me. And this film is, another example of that. My brother watched this, loved it. My co-host, Rebecca Reinhardt from In the Mic of Madness, watched this and loved it. And I was looking forward to it. But once it started and I saw that it was a kid who was obsessed with horror movies and there was elements in this movie I really enjoyed. And there's moments with that kid and his love for horror, of course, that I can appreciate. But just making light and all these self-references to the horror tropes as your setup. Now, Scream, when it did it, it was fresh and new, and I didn't like it personally, but clearly it worked. It's a freaking classic. I'm not gonna say it isn't. It very much is in its own right. It feels so tired now when I watch these flicks. It's like, I get it. There's a fucking formula to horror films, and you're pointing it out and you're making light of it and you're making your characters exist within a world where they know all these tropes exist. So anyways, the story is that this kid watches his mother die when he's young from some deranged psychopath who learned how to kill or wanted to kill because he watched horror movies. He's grown up now and he's obsessed with horror movies, and his dad is someone who speaks against them and thinks that they're trash and thinks that they corrupt people's minds. He might be right. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think it's possible. No, I don't. But yeah. So there's this coming event called Bloodfest where this guy has this huge freaking stretch of land that he's rented or whatever, and he's set up these different theme parks. He's got like clown land and werewolf land and all this shit so that you can go and you can experience horror movies in their, organic state, I suppose, or you can see them in real life. The kid is told not to go there by his father, but when he disobeys his father and ends up going, he realizes that Bloodfest is not just a show, it's for real, and they better play by the rules or they won't be able to survive the night. So his horror expertise is what is going to save his fellow compatriots there. And I was sitting there and I was watching this and I was like, man, I guess I would be this character that everyone would be gathered around like, okay, what next? So, and his love for horror and some of the things that he says about horror, he's trying to explain to this guy because he meets one of his idols in the movie, the guy who plays the Arbor Day killer. I think he is obsessed with this movie called Arbor Day, which is a play on all of the holiday horror movies. And Arbor Day is obviously not one of them, but they thought that was a cute title. It was fun. It was you know. That was fun, and I liked that. And there's some decent gore in this. There's people getting halved down the center. That's mostly the gore for some reason. It happens like 4 or 5 times in the movie, and a bunch of blood squirts out of them. Cool stuff. You've seen it a million times, but it's always fun to see. But I did like the dialogue and between the kid and this hero of his. He meets him. He's kind of a dick, and you're like, you know, that whole never meet your heroes thing. But yeah, later in the movie, he's talking with him, and the guy's like, why the hell do you like this shit? And his explanation is because that's, as horror fans, I'm sure if you're a horror fan like me, if you're crazy obsessed like I am, and you know, this is a big, gigantic part of your life, you get asked that question a lot. And it's from people who don't want to really hear what you have to say. They're more looking at you like you're a weirdo, but you feel compelled to explain yourself, whether it be because they're a family member or whatever, they're important to you in some way, and you feel compelled to explain to them why you love what you love. And I think the more you explain it over the years, or maybe a better understanding of it, you get a better explanation, but it's never really properly put into words because it's hard to explain. And I like what the kid says here. I thought that was a cool little moment there for horror fans. We all obviously have different stories of why and what compels us to be into this shit, but I just like seeing that kind of stuff in films because it speaks to me, obviously. But yeah, the comedy, I don't think I laughed once, to be honest. And the story, it's just been there, done that, seen this a million times. It's so over the top, but that's not a bad thing. This is a horror comedy, and it should be over the top. But some of the over the top stuff just, I don't know, it felt way too over the top for all the other stuff that was in the film that didn't feel anywhere near as over the top as it did. There's some action sequences at the end that just get a little too, it's absurd for me. The plot twist you can kind of see coming from a mile away. Which isn't a terrible thing. It just, honestly, for me, I think that if you're into all the aforementioned films, like a Final Girls or a You Might Be the Killer, as I said, or Cabin in the Woods. It's not as good as Cabin in the Woods, because I actually did really enjoy that the first time. But it's got that kind of feel to it. It's got the bigger kid from Spider-Man Homecoming in it. The guy who breaks the Death Star when he sees Peter Parker freaking climbing around on the roof. You don't know the guy I'm talking about. He's not the main kid, but he's just the main kid's friend. I don't recognize the main kid. In fact, there's only maybe like 1 or 2 faces that I saw, but the film is well produced. It looks good. And there's some, like, you know, tracking shots that are clearly like CGI'd, but it shows like the whole park and whatnot. It looks really good. This, you know, the CGI there is well done. There's some CGI in this that's bad. But this film is a total kitchen sink thing. You got everything in this because it's a theme park with all the different tropes of horror and all the different subgenres. So you've got zombies and you've got vampires and you've got whatever. And the explanation for some of these things is ridiculous and silly and you just kind of roll your eyes. But as I said, because it's a comedy, you're not going to overthink it too much. It just, yeah, I wasn't really feeling the characters all that much outside of, you know, one of his little bits of dialogue there. I don't know. It was just a hodgepodge. It was like taking every subgenre of horror, trying to mash it together as this meta freaking amalgamation. And I personally didn't have all that much fun from it. But I did like the gore. I did like certain things about it. It wasn't enough gore, but the gore that I got, I dug. Yeah, so there you go. That's my case. I don't think it's a bad movie by any means, and I do think that if you're into these kinds of films, you should check it out. So it's a recommendation, but for me, myself, I wouldn't recommend it to me or people like me. So that's hard, but I know so many people who really enjoyed it and are fans of these kinds of films. I'm personally not, so I'm not really the target audience, I suppose. But those are my thoughts. Agree with me or disagree with me. I don't know. But anyway, guys, all right.